We're now on the 17th day of an armed occupation. That is, people have guns. Armed is a peculiar expression for it. It's all happening on a wildlife refuge in Oregon. No end in sight at this point. At the heart of the protest, however, is Dwight Hammond Jr. and his son Stephen Hammond. And 2 weeks ago, today, they surrendered to federal authorities after a judge ordered they finish out a mandatory 5-year sentence for burning some brush on a federal land, about 130 acres. It is, in my judgment, a pure-out effort by the federal government and a politicized Justice Department and an out-of-control Bureau of Land Management agency to simply crush a family and to do so in utter violation of everything this country stands for. Joining us to talk about it is the wife of Dwight Hammond and the mother of Stephen Hammond, Susan Hammond, and her close friend of the Hammond family, Chris Wilson. Mrs. Hammond, I want to say, first of all, my heart goes out to you and your family, your friends, the community, and frankly, the country for what you're going through. Your husband and your son have been in prison for 2 weeks now. How are they doing?
I believe they're doing as good as they can under the circumstances. And how are you holding up? You've got a family, a ranch to run. You got some help, but it's tough. Has anybody from your congressional delegation, any one of the 2 senators from your state, called you to say, what can we do to help to make this right? No, they haven't.
I have to say, I'm just stunned. And the community seems like it is... it's been poleaxed. They're stunned, and they don't seem to know what to do. Yet, 2 members of your family are in prison because they did a backfire, set a backfire on your ranch land and the federal land that you had grazing rights to, which, as Congressman Greg Walden has said, you know, ranchers do that all the time. And sometimes it's the BLM doing it and not notifying the owner when they do a backfire on private property. I mean, how do you feel about the lack of justice in this case?
It's nothing new. That's how it is when you live out in the far lands of eastern Oregon, when the majority of the land is government land, and a majority of the people work for the government.
You know, and to those who don't know, watching us right now, in Oregon, that number rises above half the land in Oregon is federal land. Across the West, most states, it's about half. It rises to 80% in a state like Nevada. So is there any way, Chris, for the family, for the community to come together with Congressman Greg Walden, a Democratic Senator, Ron Wyden? I mean, we couldn't even get a call back from these people as Mrs. Hammond, as your husband and your son are taken off to prison after having already served time in prison for the offense. What can be done here? Chris?
Well, we can keep fighting. We have to do something. We have to ask our elected officials to help us out. Greg Walden has fought for us for a long time, yes, but he hasn't been able to get the support from his other supporters, from his other senators and congressmen, and from the BLM. He's passed laws on this subject, and with this very family on the Steens Mountain Act, and the BLM is still in violation and holding the Hammonds responsible for them staying within the law when the BLM isn't obeying the law as it is.
Well, you know, you guys have, your family, Mrs. Hammond, has worked with the federal government, with Congressman Walden on setting aside. I mean, you guys have done terrific work to balance the interests of environmentalists and the private ranchers. Why in the world isn't there, why isn't there anyone in your delegation that has the guts and the principle to stand up? How about in your community and say, you know, and forget the Bundys. I don't even want to talk about them. In your community, stand up and say, by God, we're not going to take it anymore. I mean, have we reached a point where a senator isn't worth 2 bits? I mean, this is just, I'm sorry, this is just...
In Oregon, to eastern Oregon, that's kind of how things are.
it's too bad, but our voting population is on the west side of the state, and the sparsely populated ranching communities in eastern Oregon don't really compete in the voting arena.
Right.
It looks like that the federal laws or the local laws would have to be obeyed by either side of the equation, but that's not the case.
Mrs. Hammond, Mr. Wilson, if I could ask you, we're out of time here. Could I ask you to come back and join us as we go through this? We're going to try to do everything we can to be of any help, at least let people know about the outrage and talk to, I mean, there's something that, this cannot just stand. I know that as I feel that, you must feel it by orders of magnitude beyond anything I can conceive. I salute your courage, and I salute your example, Susan Hammond, and that of your family. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.